Hey friends, welcome back to the Day in the Life vlog. Today's a bright early start where I wake up at 7:15 a.m. having been reading the incredible book Lifespan by David Sinclair until like 2 in the morning. I shower, change, meet up with Gordon, and head into an Uber to go all the way to South London. Gordon's got his absolutely enormous camera with him, and we're going to film a talk that I'm giving to the international rights team at Penguin Random House, my book publisher, about meaningful productivity or something like that. We get to the Penguin offices at 9:15 and admire the beautiful aesthetic of the place with books absolutely everywhere. Feels pretty scary to be writing a book with such a major publisher and being in the same company as all these incredible authors. Then we meet the rights team, have a few conversations, and I say thank you to the people who've been helping sell the book in all these different international territories, and then it's time for my talk. I've never been to the Penguin offices, because when we got the thing, Ro and I communicated through email and Zoom, and then pandemic happened and all that. So it's super cool to be here. And thank you to everyone who's been selling the rights as well. It's been pretty bizarre getting emails, be like, oh, someone wants to translate into Korean or Japanese or like traditional and simplified Chinese, like what the hell's that? You know, that kind of stuff. It kind of feels weird to be introduced as an author because I have this like profound sense of imposter syndrome in that I'm not yet an author and I'm just sort of masquerading as one or like an author to be. A lot of the calls that I've had with Rowan and our agent Kate have felt more like therapy sessions. Around like, yeah, it's okay, you know, you've got something to say, you have an audience that's interested in your stuff, and it's okay to turn it into a book format. Because as you guys know, there's something about writing a book that feels like more of a big deal than almost anything else. Like, you know, a book is out there and it's like this prestigious item, and it feels very scary putting these ideas into book format and testing them out on real people. But I guess what the message of the book is that it's a book about productivity, but it's kind of trying to be a bit different from the sort of traditional productivity advice that's out there. It's more about how do we incorporate fun or enjoyment or passion or whatever word you want to use into the stuff that we are already doing to make it more fun. And the more fun it is, the more energizing it is for us. And like, you know, how nice would it be if we could get to the end of most of our work days feeling energized rather than feeling completely exhausted. And that's not to say that, like, for example, when you have that energy, you then have to funnel it into a side hustle or funnel it into monetizing your passion. But it is to say that, like, life is just better when we get to the end of a workday where we have some energy left in the tank to give to the things that we care about, like our friends, our family, our relationships, or potentially our hobbies and our side hustles, our YouTube channel, learning that language, starting that business, doing that project that we've always wanted to do for some time. And what I found is that while I was a medical student for those 2 years and then working as a doctor for those 2 years, there were some days where I would get to the end of a workday and I would feel energized. I would feel like, oh, okay, I'm feeling good, I've got energy, and I want to funnel that into, I don't know, working on my YouTube channel or working on my business. And then there were other days where I was like, I got to the end of the workday and I was completely exhausted and I didn't want to do anything at all other than sit and watch Netflix or just find myself scrolling through Instagram. That kind of question led me on this sort of research journey, which has ultimately ended up where this book has ended up, on figuring out like, what are the things within our brains that are creating this experience of stuff being more fun, stuff being more energizing, stuff being more enjoyable, and is there a way that we can actively choose to incorporate those things into whatever we're doing for our day job so that at the end of the day we become more energized, and also incorporate those things into whatever our side hustle is if we're into that sort of thing, so that it feels like energizing to be editing YouTube videos at nighttime rather than watching Netflix. And like, what are those things? That takes us into a whole like research world with, you know, the science of things like dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin and like these sort of hormones in the brain that contribute to a feeling of passion, a feeling of enjoyment, a feeling of fun. And it also takes us into the territory of things like understanding where motivation comes from, like extrinsic forms of motivation, intrinsic motivation, sustainable motivation. What is it that makes us want to do things rather than just feel like we have to do things?
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you. After the talk, I have a few more conversations with the team where they share what they took away from the talk and their own perspectives on their struggles and solutions with procrastination and distraction and motivation. Felt a bit weird giving a talk in front of people. I don't do that a lot these days, especially pandemic-wise, everything being on Zoom, everything being on a camera. I do much prefer talking to actual people where you can feel the energy in the room and make eye contact with people and like get a vibe of like when people are nodding along, and you can kind of tell when someone's like listening, when someone's not. And so if they're listening on something, then I'll often think about expanding on that thing a little bit more. And what was interesting is that it was often the practical, actionable tidbits that people seemed to really comment on afterwards. Which reminds me of what Malcolm Gladwell talks about when it comes to writing, is that there's the meat and then there's like the spice or something like that. Or there's like the stuff which is like the meaty bit of the book where you're trying to change someone's mind about something. But then you want to give them lots and lots of like little tidbits that they can talk about at a cocktail party on those little bits of candy. He calls it like, the meat and the candy. The candy that they can take away from the thing and be like, oh yeah, I learned something today. So yeah, need to think actively about more of those sorts of decisions when putting the book together. But yeah, super fun. Kind of scary talking to people, but hey, it always feels very, it feels energizing rather than draining. So good times. At this point, it's 11 a.m. We've made some new friends, and it's time to head to the studio. En route, I managed to spill some coffee on my white hoodie, absolute classic. We get back to the studio by 11:45, where the team are not doing any work, and are instead having fun remixing Gordon with some kind of Skrillex song. Apparently Skrillex is some sort of singer.
Make it really... You got Gordon on screen for the full effect of this. You ready? Yeah. Okay. Hey, part-timers. Angus, are you allowing this?
Yes.
At noon, I have a Zoom call with Sean, a new video editor who's joining our team, taking our total employee headcount to 18 people, which is pretty sick. And then it's time to break my intermittent fast with a takeaway from a local Greek restaurant. I've decided to go mostly plant-based with a bit of fish thrown in occasionally for good measure as a strategy for longevity after my new discoveries in the science of aging, thanks to the David Sinclair book and podcast that I've been listening to. At 1 p.m, our podcast guest arrives, and so we say hi to Karma Medic. He and I end up having a chat for the Deep Dive podcast for just over 2 hours, and we talk about everything from toxic productivity to medicine to therapy and relationships. After the podcast, I try my hand at vlogging with Gordon's enormous camera, and then it's time for a Zoom meeting, followed by some hanging out in the studio with the team while they throw a dead cat around the room.
Hey.
At 5:45 p.m, that's the workday over, and now it's time for our team social.
Say hi to the vlog.
Hi vlog, how are you?
So 6 of us walk over to the local Wagamama for a quick meal, followed by a cramped Uber ride to a local brewery for a live music gig. I grab myself a cheeky peppermint tea, of course, and admire the extensive studio gear. The gig's pretty good. Check out Ruby Duff on Spotify to hear more of her stuff, and I even get called out on stage very briefly to provide some backup vocals. And so that concludes this day in the life. I head back home that evening to get my beauty sleep ready to start the following day afresh. Thank you so much for watching. Here is a playlist of more day in the life vlogs if you're into that kind of thing. Have a great day, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Bye-bye.